Day 10 of the 2024 U.S. Chess Championships saw a winner crowned in the U.S. Women's Championship, with everything remaining on the line in the Open after the penultimate round 10. Starting with the women's section, tournament leader and reigning champion Carissa lost for a second round in a row, this game to Anna Zatonskih, but in the meantime, Alice Lee defeated Yip's main rival in Begim Tokhirjonova, knocking Begim out of contention for first and clinching the title for Carissa. This means Carissa Yip is the 2024 U.S. Women's Champion, winning back-to-back titles and collecting her third overall championship. While Yip has clinched first with 8 out of 10, Lee and Begim are currently tied for second place with 6.5. In the open section, tournament leader Fabiano Caruana held today against Leinier Dominguez, maintaining his half-point lead over Awonder Liang, who drew with Wesley. Meanwhile, Robson defeated Abhimanyu Mishra, joining Awonder in second place. Going into tomorrow's final round, Caruana leads with 6 out of 10, with Awonder and Robson a half-point behind on 5.5. Going into the games from today, we'll start with the key game in the Open between Dominguez and Caruana, which started off as a Rossolimo opening with Black playing 3g6. Bishop takes c6, bc, and in this one, it seemed like Caruana was rather well prepared after White develops here with b3, bishop to b2, a5. Black, for the most part, seemed to get out of the opening here with a pretty satisfactory position. d5, d4, takes, bishop f5. And soon we reach this kind of late middle game after knight d4, queen g5, knight takes f5, queen takes f5, where White has traded off multiple minor pieces, has a slightly worse dark-squared bishop. In general, this position seems close to equal, with maybe Black having a small advantage. Caruana didn't really have much chances to win this game, but it seems like he started pushing here with h5 and queen f4. But yeah, according to the engines at least, it never seemed like Black had any chance to get anything more than just a slight plus in this game. So there was a bit of a struggle here in the heavy piece endgame. Queen e7, d4, rook f3, check, important resource going into the queen and pawn endgame. White wins a pawn here, but queen f4. Black's queen is very active, and Black is going to be winning back a pawn soon, no matter what. So here, queen e4, queen d3 takes, and the players got this queen and pawn endgame. But now after f3, queen e3, Dominguez takes on c6 here, and yeah, too many pawns get traded off, and the position, again, just remains drawish until the end of the game, and eventually a draw was agreed. Meanwhile, Awonder drew his game against Wesley, and one of the few decisive games of the round was played between Robson and Mishra. This one came out of an Italian game. Black was definitely fine out of the opening here, but at this point, Robson manages to put Mishra under heavy pressure with this move c4, hitting the d5 pawn. Now, Black takes on e5 here. There's a lot of pawn tension in the position. White takes on d5, takes, and now rook takes d5. Very, very interesting exchange sacrifice. Bishop takes d5, bishop takes d5. White now gets a very, very strong light square bishop. Mishra could have saved the rook here with rook to b8, and then White definitely just has very, very good compensation for the exchange. Although it doesn't seem to be immediately winning, White could play bishop to c6, for example, and then if Black wants to keep the exchange as here as well, he has to watch out for ideas like queen to c2 check and going after Black's king. So Mishra probably could have played that, but he decides to go king h8, and he just offers the exchange back. Robson doesn't take it right away. Instead goes bishop c6, queen e6, queen c2, bishop d6. But now White trades on d6, and this ends up being a mistake for Black, because now White wins back the exchange. Rook takes a8, f takes e5, and Robson ends up with an extra e-pawn in this heavy piece endgame. Ironically, this is actually very, very similar to a position that Mishra lost earlier in the tournament to Caruana. Very, very similar endgame where he was also down this e-pawn with queens and rooks on one queen and one rook for each side on the board, and he ended up losing that one. Unfortunately for him, he ends up losing this one as well, as Ray slowly but surely makes progress here. advancing everything in the position. And the position was holding for black until this move, queen to c6. Apparently a4 here, and black is still within drawing range. After queen c6, though, Ray takes on a5, and black cannot take on e6 here because white has the move queen a2, pinning the rook on this long diagonal. Very, very unfortunate resource for black. King f7, and then white can just take on e6 here, go into the king and pawn endgame, and is completely winning with the outside passed pawn. So now it's 2 pawns up for Robson. Mishra tries queen to f3, but queen e5 keeps everything defended. And from here, it was just a matter of technique. And eventually Robson does get the job done as he converts with his 2 extra pawns and wins this game. This was kind of the last moment. At this point, Mishra can't handle it anymore, has to take this pawn. But now queen d5, rook e2 ended the game. Again, because of the pinned rook on e6. So very, very nice win for Robson as he gets himself into a tie for second place with Awonder Liang, as they're both a half point behind Caruana heading into the final round tomorrow. Moving to the U.S. Women's Championship, very, very important round today, as Carissa, of course, going into today's game was 1.5 points ahead of Begim. So she would need to either win this game to clinch the title or get a draw. And if Begim were to lose or even draw her game, then that would allow Carissa to clinch the title as well. She gets into a very, very sharp position here against Zatonskih. Position kind of resembles like a closed Benoni, but yeah, very, very imbalanced here. But black is doing well at this moment after this move, c4, getting a lot of nice squares for her pieces. h3, f5. This maybe was unnecessary. a6 here seems to be good enough for black, and after bishop a4, just grabbing the bishop pair with knight takes a4, and then playing for f5 in that position as well. But anyways, this one was definitely very, very chaotic right out of the middle game here. As you can see, Carissa opens up the king side and gets a lot of activity. And yeah, for the most part, was doing well here. She gets the light squared bishop, knight takes c4. White starts fighting back with h4 here, but queen to b6 takes. Actually, Zatonskih, I think, is doing well here according to the engines after queen to g4. But again, very, very messy position. Hard to play this one accurately for both sides. But yeah, game is very, very interesting through and through. Takes h5, queen e2, rook c8 here, a4, h4, h3. Now at this point, Carissa definitely starting to take over the initiative as she uses her h-pawn to try to open up the king. If white were to take this pawn, then black has ideas of knight to e5 and heading for knight f3 check. So this is black's idea. It's very, very dangerous for white. So bishop e3, queen a5, bishop d4. We get trades on d4, queen takes d5, knight to g3. Now black really should have taken on g2 at some point, just taking this pawn off the board. And the position would be equal in material after king takes g2, but black definitely having just a huge advantage as white's king is very, very weak, especially on the light squares, and black has a super strong light squared bishop. Instead, we see queen takes d4 from Carissa, grabbing the wrong pawn. Now queen g4, queen d5, queen takes h3, and white is able to get some activity on the king side. Note that here it's too late to go hg anymore because of knight f6 check was a huge threat in the position. So queen d5, white takes this one, queen f7, rook e2, d5. Carissa continues to attack here. Bishop to d3, now hitting the rook and hitting f2. But Zatonskih, in heavy time trouble, finds a key resource, g6, to keep this one in play. Now black doesn't have time to take anything, has to go back. Bishop takes g6. Now knight to f3, white covers the f-pawn, and it's black's king that starts to feel a little bit uncomfortable with knight to g5. So the game sees e5, but now white takes on e5, takes, queen takes f2, king to h2, rook to c7, queen e6 check. And here Carissa makes a serious mistake, king to g7 on move 39, looking for the very, very annoying check on h8 with the rook. Instead, she should have played queen to f7, and then in case of queen takes f7, for example, bishop takes f7, black would be absolutely fine in this endgame, just up a pawn. White can also take on d5, and we basically have an equal endgame. But king to g7, Carissa plays for the win, missing that white can actually play rook f1, which Zatonskih finds, with the idea that rook h8 check can be met with the fantastic rook h5. Really, really nice resource from white. If black takes this rook with their rook, then knight takes h5 comes with check, and next move, white is taking the queen. If black takes with the bishop, then same thing, but white has a lot of moves here. Queen e5. We can't take here because black will recapture and give mate, but queen e5 check is winning for white, followed by rook takes f2, and white is picking up the queen here as well. So rook h5, very, very annoying move for black. In fact, only way not to lose is to give the queen with queen takes g3 and rook takes h5. So that's what Carissa ends up doing, but now she only has rook, bishop, and pawn for the queen. Sometimes that's enough material, but here white's queen is very strong. She trades rooks on f3 and tries to hold this position, but queen d7 check, and white is immediately winning one of black's pawns. We reach this endgame where what is just a rook and bishop for the queen, and because white has this very strong f-pawn, it turns out that it is winning for white here. So Zatonskih takes some time maneuvering around, gaining some time on the clock, but her technique ends up being very, very good as she just slowly makes progress using the queen, bringing the king in, and eventually she's able to get into black's position. Queen c4 here, queen c5, queen d5. It's tough for white because you can't really push f5 in a lot of positions, but the queen and king get very, very active here with queen e5, king h6, and Carissa makes a final blunder with bishop to d3, losing to queen g5 check. Is after the king moves king f8, there's queen d8 mate, and otherwise black is just losing material here. So bishop d3 was an unfortunate blunder by Carissa. She could have continued the game with king to f8 here. That would have been the most stubborn defense, but then at least white can go queen b8 check and pick up the b pawn as well as the a pawn, and then black is not going to be surviving that position. So very, very well played game by Zatonskih. Very, very nice technique to take down Carissa in this game. Fortunately for Yip, though, her main rival, Begim Tokhirjonova, ends up losing this game to Alice Lee, which allows Carissa to clinch the title with 1 round left to play in the tournament. I'll just show you, folks, the key moment that happened in this game between Lee and Tokhirjonova, as this one was definitely heading for a draw for some time, with the players reaching this equal rook and pawn endgame with 4 pawns each. But I'll show you, folks, what happened here after Alice plays h4. I don't think really trying to play for the win. I think just trying to keep the position balanced. But here it's Begim that starts playing for the win as she advances h5. Not exactly necessary move, but totally playable. White pushes g5, takes, king to g6. But now f4. And now it starts to get a little bit double-edged as white has these 3 connected pawns, whereas black has pawns that are more split. So h4, f5 check. King takes g5, rook takes g7, king f4. Black could have played king f6 as well and kept the draw at hand, but king f4 is also playable. But now f6, white's pawns start to get very, very far advanced. King takes e4, rook to g4 check, and king to e5 played. And this is the key moment where Begim ends up going wrong as Alice finds the very nice move, rook f4, to turn the tables in this endgame. And all of a sudden it turns out if black takes this rook, white pushes f7, and black's rook is not able to stop the f-pawn from promoting. So white is going to get a new queen and then is going to be winning that endgame against the rook. So Begim's blunder here was this move king to e5 after rook g4 check. King f5 would have also been bad because of just the immediate f7, and white is promoting here as well. Black needed to find king d5. And the point, first of all, if f7, then black is in time to stop the pawn with rook to f3 and is totally fine. But if white goes rook f4, then black needs to be prepared to bring the rook back with rook to b3, for example. f7, rook to b8, white would promote. Black has to give up the rook for the pawn, but at the end of the line, the king is close enough with king to c4 to force a draw with the a pawn, because here white's king is too far, and black is going to be making a draw here. So that was holding for black, but after king to e5, rook f4, here the king is too far. So if black tries the same thing with rook to b3 and rook to b8, unfortunately for black, white is picking up the a pawn at the very end, and black is not in time to defend it. So king d4, for example, rook a8, and it's game over. So rook f4, Alice finds a clutch move here. The game continues for some time, but she does make a new queen, and Begim tries to hold on with the rook and h-pawn, but this one is just winning for white with best play. Takes Alice a little bit of time here, but her technique was very, very solid. She slowly advances the king, continues to give checks, drives black's pieces back, and now king to g4. Things are getting very bad for black at this point. Queen e7 check, queen here, check, and now nice finish, queen g8 check. Black resign at this point because king f6, queen to g5 check is going to pick up the rook, and that's the end of the game. So very nice win for Alice as she pulls one out in the end game, catches up to Begim in second place, and now these two will be fighting for second going into the last round tomorrow. So that takes us into tomorrow's final round, round 11. We've got Caruana as white against Shankland in the open section, as Caruana looks to win his second title in a row. And in the women's section, we have Carissa white against Alice Lee. Carissa has already clinched the title. Alice, however, is playing for second place. She'll be black against Carissa. Begim, in the meantime, will be playing white against Tatev Abrahamyan. So should be a very, very dramatic race for those final slots, as well as the World Cup spots in both the U.S. Women's Championship and the regular U.S. Championship as well. Should be a very, very exciting final round, and hopefully I'll see you folks back here for the recap at the very end. Until then, take care.